Hi, and welcome to my Wellbeing Final Project. My name is Kate O'Farrell, and I am a graduate student in the kinesiology program within the College of Health. And this project has been an opportunity for me to kind of outline my experience during this semester. And what I've done is I've called this a journey to enhance life satisfaction through practice. And that's a word. The word practice has become a word that I really appreciate in the sense that this is never perfect, but it is something that can really develop over time, and I've experienced that throughout this semester. So I look forward to sharing a little bit of that with you today. So first, just as an outline, I'd like to start with an introduction both to myself as well as to how I see this journey. So that includes a little bit of my kind of perspective on what this assignment was and what our series of assignments were for the course itself, as well as what that meant for me for my own practice, as well as some considerations for what I learned about myself during a couple of the assignments that were provided during this journey or this adventure. The next section is going to be charting the territory, and this is really where I've included kind of my main considerations or findings from the text that we use during class. And obviously, I could say a lot more. These are just going to be kind of some of the highlights of what I really found as important during our time with the texts. And then I also included several different articles that I've included as kind of a literature research portion to help outline some things that are more important to me that I really wanted to dive into a little bit deeper. From there, I then have my own deep exploration where I consider what the impact of this project was for myself personally, looking at this as kind of a case study of my journey through this experience. And then my future travel plans just include what I plan to do with this research, with this experience that I've had, as well as a lot of the different tools and resources that have become available to me during this semester. So to start, I'd like to just introduce myself. Again, my name's Kate, but really what about myself that I want to include are some of my passions. I have a passion for mind-body medicine. I have a real deep appreciation for what the mind is able to do in the sense of healing. My doctoral research is centered around the refugee population, specifically refugee women, and all of the women that I work with are survivors of torture. And so I think you'll be able to see a little bit of that as I go throughout this project, where I myself have been lucky enough not to have experienced such trauma in my life, but working with these women on a regular basis, it's impacted how I see subjective well-being, how I see the importance of positive psychology as we develop tools over time. My intention in this project is really just to explore. I think I began this project with a pretty broad understanding of what I thought life happiness was, what I thought life satisfaction was, and this project has really helped me to go deeper. And my intention was simply just to learn more. And I think that I've been successful in that. One part of our assignment that I really appreciated was a consideration of values. And I just wanted to highlight some of the values that came up when I did the VIA Strengths survey, because I think they speak to why I moved forward with what I did during my daily practice, as well as other considerations for my project throughout this semester. So as you can see, I've only listed the first 10 out of those 24 that are available, but a few that really stood out to me. Obviously, gratitude. This course was focused on gratitude, and it was exciting for me to see that that was a strength of mine. And I've known that, but being able to kind of put that into a context was a really valuable experience for me. Kindness, specifically to other people that maybe don't always receive as much kindness, is something that's very important to me, doing things to take care of them. I like to consider all sides. I like to be able to not necessarily place judgment, which is interesting that judgment is the term for my third value, where I try to live with non-judgment, but I think in a sense this definition of judgment lets me see that I am equal in how I evaluate things. And I would definitely agree that I evaluate things in quite a bit of detail when I consider them. The last ones really go through a lot of other things that are important to me, but one that stood out was humor. And that's something that you'll see later in my daily practice that I added. But this activity was part of what really spoke to what I wanted to include for my own daily practice. So, considering the journey itself, the outline was very clear. We had kind of our first group of modules, which were a chance to be a little bit more prescriptive in what was happening from a learner perspective, where I really just kind of said, okay, I'm going to see what's available to me, how this experience is, and then the next following modules, Journey 2 and 3, really helped us to kind of decide for ourselves and become a little bit more accountable for what it was we were doing in our practice. So I just wanted to show a few images to help highlight what I did and what I maybe changed. So in the beginning, we started with just a well-being scale, and then our 3 gratitudes or noticings. I love that we considered it as gratitudes or noticings, because sometimes I didn't necessarily tie it to something I was grateful for, but if I let it just be something that I noticed, then I tied it to gratitude in the end. It kind of came full circle for me when I was able to just use noticings as part of that consideration. Random acts of kindness really resonated with me. It was something that I felt like I tried to do often, but never as intentionally as I did during this time. So that was great. Quality time was not something that I gave to myself. I appreciate the practice of meditation and slowing down, but I definitely don't practice it for myself regularly. So building that in was a good first step to recognize maybe what was missing a bit in my own journey, as well as what I maybe had the ability to control a bit more than I thought that I did. For Journey 2, I adjusted things a little bit. Of course, still included well-being and the 3 gratitudes or noticings and quality time. But mindful movement was something that I was very eager to bring into my practice. This is something that I want to bring into my practice with my refugee women as well. And so I wanted to be sure that that was included as kind of an experiential piece for me so that I could see how things went moving forward. I changed the random acts a little bit to an act of service. And so it gave me a little bit more of a spiritual connection to that, where it could be something as simple as saying hello, or it could be kind of a more grand act, and just seeing kind of what that meant for me. So then in my third journey, this is where I really felt like I had the ability to understand what we were reading, understand what was needed for my own personal well-being through the previous journey's experiences. And this is what I kind of came up with as my final, what I want to be part of my well-being practice. So just noting my well-being, which by itself was a very valuable thing, because I started to notice maybe people or experiences that were adding to my well-being, as well as those experiences and individuals that may be taking away from my well-being. And that by itself was very valuable just to put on paper, so that I actually had a chance to think about what I was choosing to engage with. Of course, the gratitudes practice was lovely, being able to really kind of tie everything in together with what I was seeing and the importance of gratitude that we are reading in class. Of course, quality time. This is something that I'm still trying to make a regular practice because it's an assignment. I felt like I was able to make that happen, but it's challenging. It's definitely hard when I have responsibilities, and I'm sure this applies for everybody, to be able to really make that a priority. But this class made it more of a habit, which was very useful. I think the most useful thing that I could consider when I know its importance, I know that I want to do it, but that habit piece can be difficult. I continued with my mindful movement, kind of letting it be whatever I needed it to be that day, an act of service, and then I included laughter. And remember, I noted in my values activity that humor was important to me. This was something that I wanted to notice more so that I could pay attention to when I was maybe having a good time or being able to just experience happiness a little bit more overtly. And so that was a really rewarding experience for me. You'll notice that here in this section, I have my well-being scale that I always referred to. I just want to introduce you to my well-being scale a little bit more so that you know how I was guiding my own definition of well-being and what that really meant to me. So as you can see, I have myself on a scale. I can be as low as a 1 or as high as a 5. And each of these was just defined by me subjectively. So really just how I see myself kind of defining if someone asked me on a scale of 1 to 5, where would I put myself? I'm just kind of giving my own subjective definition to what that means. So first, if I'm a 1, some words that resonate with me for this level of well-being would be depressed, disconnected, and lacking energy. And this is kind of maybe more of a depleted of energy. You'll see that I experience fatigue and other levels of well-being, but 1 is no energy, completely wiped out. 2 then moves to just being easily frustrated, not necessarily always frustrated, but my buttons are a little bit easier to push. I still experience fatigue, and I have little patience. 3 shows me just a kind of calm, nice, in general, mediocre outlook on life. I'm fine, I feel good, but I'm not necessarily thriving. 4 is the idea of being satisfied, content, and productive with what I needed to get done. So I'm getting my to-do list done, but I'm not necessarily moving beyond that into creativity. 5 then, I'm creative, fully satisfied. I feel connected with myself, with others, with the work that I'm doing, and I have an energy about myself. So one thing that I noticed was that I tend to rate myself in the middle. So 1 was rarely reported, and 5 was actually rarely reported as well during my well-being practice. And that was interesting to me because I feel like if someone were to ask me and I had to respond in person to someone, I would probably respond at closer to a 5, if not a 5. And so it was interesting to see how this semester, which I have to admit was one of the hardest semesters I've ever had, I definitely pulled closer to maybe between a 3 and a 4 on average, sometimes even dipping down to a 2 or a 1.5. So that was an interesting thing for me just because I wouldn't have considered that I was that low in my well-being, but being able to put it on paper really helped me see maybe some areas of action. And of course, there are times when I noticed I was a 2 and that bothered me, but it wasn't so bothersome that I felt like I lost track of what I wanted to accomplish. So now what we'll do is, knowing kind of where I came from, I want to chart a territory of kind of what my experience was as we considered the text, as well as some new connections that I made with some research. So what you'll do is there's going to be a next video to kind of dive into this section. So I will see you back in a minute.